Okay, for chapter 5 of Bridge to Neverland, it's entitled The Woods, and this is where I feel the story starts to take off and really start to draw the reader in. "Who's up for one more tour?" said Tom, waving a brochure at his wife and children who were sitting on a sofa in the living room of the bed and breakfast where they were staying in Bath. "It's a walking tour. Bath by night." "Wouldn't Bath by night be the same as Bath by day, only darker?" said Aidan. Tom sighed, then looked toward Sarah. "Dad, I'm really tired," she said with a huge yawn. "All that pedaling today wore me out." "Well," said Tom, "you were the ones who insisted on renting bicycles." "I know, Dad," said Sarah, "and I can't wait to ride around some more tomorrow, but I think I'm going to bed early tonight." "Me too," said Aidan, dramatically. Natalie, frowning, said, "Are you two all right?" It was unlike her children to go to bed early. "Really, Mom, I'm fine," said Sarah, and she rose from the sofa. "Good night." "Me too," said Aidan. "Well, I guess we'll see you at breakfast then," said Tom. He turned to his wife. "What about you, Nat? Up for a walking tour?" "To be honest," said Natalie, "I'm pretty beat myself. What I'm up for is a nice cup of tea, a book, and some sleep." "Okay then," said Tom, a bit disappointed. "I guess it's going to be a quiet night." And then we shift gears. Sarah and Aidan waited an hour and a half to be sure their parents had settled in for the night. As the minutes crawled by, Sarah verified for the 15th time that Aidan had entered the coordinates correctly into his phone's GPS. She also checked and rechecked her backpack to make sure it contained the supplies they bought earlier that day with their parents while they were antique shopping. 2 flashlights, some cheese sandwiches, chocolate bars, 4 bottles of water, and from a camping store next to the supermarket, a survival kit in a tin. This was a small vacuum-sealed metal container about the size of a coffee can and packed with supposedly useful supplies. A whistle, duct tape, fish hooks, compass, first aid supplies. Sarah thought it was stupid. "What do you think we're going to do, fish?" But Aidan thought it was cool and insisted they buy it. At 9:30 p.m., Sarah, wearing the backpack, quietly opened the door to their room and stepped into the hall. She stood outside her parents' door for a moment, listening. Hearing nothing, she gestured for Aidan to come out, then closed their door gently and tiptoed down the hall. Through the empty living room outside, they went around the side of the building to the bike rack and unlocked the combination cable lock, freeing their rental bikes. Sarah got out the Google map she had the concierge print out back at their London hotel. According to Google, they were 3 miles from the location indicated on McGill's document, although by road it was more like 5 miles. They wheeled their bikes to the street, and at the moment there was no traffic. The night was cool and clear. A bright half moon was rising. "Are we really doing this?" said Aidan. "What do you mean?" "I mean, are we crazy, sneaking out in the middle of the night in the middle of England to go find something that we don't even know what it is? Because of some weird old piece of paper?" I mean, it seemed like a fun idea, but now that we're actually doing it, it just seems a little, I don't know, crazy. "Maybe," said Sarah, "but after all this work, we're here, 3 miles away from the place, and that piece of paper is taking us to it. You can chicken out if you want, but I'm going to see what's there." "I'm not chickening out." "Well, then come on." She mounted her bike and began pedaling toward the end of the street. Aidan, with less enthusiasm, mounted his bike and followed. "Why couldn't I have a normal sister?" he mostly said to himself. They rode on wide, well-lit streets, sticking to the sidewalk. They came to London Road and followed it to Bath. The setting became more rural, the roads passing through fields and woods, and there was no sidewalk, so Aidan had to dismount and stand by the roadside to avoid the occasional car speeding by through the night. The road's name changed again colorfully to Sally in the Wood. It entered a forest which closed in on both sides, blotting out the moon. Now every 100 yards or so, Sarah stopped to check the GPS coordinates. "Okay," she said, "here it is." Aidan looked around. "What do you mean, here? There's nothing here." "We're at the right latitude now. We just need to walk that way." She pointed to the forest. "About 1,500 feet. Well, what about the bikes?" "We'll hide them in the woods. Nobody's going to be walking through here tonight." "Yeah, you'd have to be crazy to be out here tonight." Ignoring him, Sarah carried her bike a few yards into the woods and propped it against a tree. Aidan did the same. Sarah got the flashlights out of the backpack and handed one to Aidan. They turned them on and shone the beams into the woods. There was no path, only trees, underbrush, and shadows. To Aidan, the flashlight somehow seemed to make the woods even darker. Okay, said Sarah, setting off. Aidan, with a glance, looked back and followed. They trudged forward through thick patches of brush and bramble. Sarah checked the GPS constantly, making small corrections, and after about 15 minutes she slowed, then stopped and began moving in a slow circle. Then she stopped again. It's somewhere around here. They kept sweeping their flashlight beams in circles. All I see are trees. It might not be this spot. Look around. They separated, but not by much. Aidan had no intention of getting out of sight of his sister in these woods. They wandered among the dark trees, sweeping their light beams left and right. 10 minutes passed. I think we should go. There's nothing here but trees. There's something here. There has to be. Maybe there was something here one time, but maybe it's gone now. I'm going to keep looking, said Sarah. Okay, you do that. I'm going to... Sarah, come here. What is it, said Sarah, trotting through the brush. I'm not sure, but it's not a tree. Sarah reached him and saw that he was aiming his flashlight beam at an outcropping of massive boulders some 10 feet high. She moved closer. There was a narrow space between the nearest two boulders. She shone her light into it and saw that the space was close up, only a few feet wide. She started walking to her left around the outcropping, playing her light on the boulders. Between the fourth and fifth one, she came to a bigger opening, 3 feet high and maybe a foot wide at most. She crouched down and shone her light inside. She saw a space large enough to crawl in, and after a few feet, it turned to the right. She took off her backpack and pushed it through the opening. What are you doing? Well, I'm going in. In there? Yep, said Sarah, dropping to her hands and knees. I don't think that's a good idea, said Aidan. But Sarah was already squeezing her shoulders through the opening, and in a moment, she was completely inside. Aidan watched nervously as she crawled forward, disappearing as the crawlway turned right. He glanced around nervously at the dark woods. He didn't like being alone out there. Sarah, what do you see? No answer. Sarah? He repeated, frightened now. Are you okay? Another pause, then Sarah's voice, muffled, excited. Aidan, come in here. Why? Just come here. Reluctantly, Aidan dropped to his hands and knees and pushed through the opening, feeling the cold, rough stone through his jacket. Shining his flashlight ahead, he worked his way around the narrow right turn. The space became wider there, and the path slanted downward, giving Aidan enough headroom to rise to a crouch. He could see a slightly larger area ahead, lit by the light from Sarah's flashlight. He moved toward her, ducking to keep from hitting his head on the hard stone above him. What? Look, said Sarah, moving ahead so he could see what she was aiming her flashlight at. Aidan looked. Oh my. Sarah's light was shining on a door. It was made of a dark gray metal, and it stood roughly rectangular space, framed by massive boulders. It had two symbols drawn on it, a star and an arrow pointing down. Without a word, Sarah found a stick on the ground and used it to brush away the cobwebs from the door. Scales of rust fell off the stick and scraped. Sarah then crouched and used the stick to push aside several inches of dirt that accumulated at the bottom of the door. What exactly are you doing? Said Aidan. Well, we're going inside. Do you think that's a good idea? There could be bats in there with rabies, and if you get rabies, you have to get like 600 shots in the stomach. If you're afraid, you can stay here. I'll go in alone. I'm going with you. Good. You can go first. Aidan frowned. This was not going as he'd planned. He stepped forward and pushed gently on the door. It didn't budge. It's locked. Step aside, said Sarah, and she raised her right foot and kicked the door hard. It opened a few inches, still partially blocked by the dirt around the bottom. Sarah kicked it again and again. With each kick, the door opened a little wider, and on the fourth kick, it swung open, its rusted hinges groaning. Sarah and Aidan peered inside. It was a narrow, low-ceilinged, pitch-black tunnel, sloping downward. They felt the slight movement of dank air coming toward them, stale and sour. There was another odor, vaguely familiar to both of them. Like a wet dog, thought Aidan. Go ahead, said Sarah. Aidan shined his light down into the tunnel. He couldn't see where it ended. It was only cold, dark stone. I don't know about this, he said. "Shut up," said Aidan, and he dropped on his belly and wriggled forward. The fit was tight. His shoulder scraped against the tunnel walls. He couldn't turn around now even if he wanted to. Sarah crouched at the entrance. She almost felt sorry for Aidan, and after a minute, she could only see a shadowy blob of Aidan moving in the tunnel. Suddenly, Aidan stopped. "Whoa, you're not going to believe this." "What?" shouted Sarah, but Aidan was gone. He apparently pulled himself into a larger space. Sarah took a deep breath, dropped to her stomach, pushed the backpack into the tunnel, and wriggled through, brushing the spider webs from her face. From ahead, she could hear Aidan shouting something, his words lost in a jumble of echoes. Finally, she came to the opening which Aidan had disappeared into, and she poked her head through. "No way," she said, opening into a much larger tunnel, so big a truck could drive through it. "What do you think?" "What is this?" she said, her voice echoing off the stone walls. "It's Mr. McGill's private dungeon," said Aidan. "Seriously, why is this here?" "It must be a mine," said Aidan, "or it was a mine. It's old, no lights, no equipment. Who knows how long it's been here? So do you still think I'm crazy?" "Do you really want me to answer that, Sarah?" Sarah dragged her heel on the dusty floor, drawing a line from one side of the tunnel to the other. "What are you doing?" "Marking the entrance." She pointed to the small hole in the wall they crawled through. "It would be easy to miss." "Now what?" said Aidan. "We're going to look for clues." "Clues? There has to be something. McGill has gotten us this far. Somehow he'll let us know what to do." And we're going to stop there for the moment. The chapter goes on a little bit longer, but we can blend it into the next chapter tomorrow. So Aidan and Sarah have ventured into the woods. They've located an interesting kind of tunnel within a tunnel, and we'll see where the tunnel takes them tomorrow.